Hello, divas and depressives. My name is TP Skyen, and there's another KDA concept music video out. Now, the last one that came out was the one for Kaiza, which I didn't really talk about because it was a real-ass recording of a real-ass human being dancing in front of the camera in different locations and displaying a very impressive choreography, which isn't really an animated music video, and so there wasn't, at least I didn't think, that much for me to talk about. But now, with Ari's concept video, we are back in the realm of the animated. Well, we're sort of back in the realm of the animated because much like Eve's concept video, there isn't a tremendous amount of character animation going on here, but this one is even more static in a lot of its expression than Eve's concept video was, because this one takes the form of essentially a extended montage, like a lot of still posed shots with dynamic camera movement, like this one right here, sort of taking us through the mood, the internals of Ari's mind, how she's feeling about herself. And if you haven't listened to the song yet, taking a look at the way that this imagery is working and at the way that like the cinematography is working, the way that the colors are using, like stuff like words like fear cropping up in the background, what would you say is the mood of this particular song? Like, what's it about? Like, what's the attitude and expression of Ari as we look at her here? What's the energy of the motions and the movements that are happening? And if you haven't listened to the actual song, you might be surprised to learn that it sounds a little bit something like this. I won't play too much of it because YouTube's copyright butts are always a little bit squirrely and you never know when they're gonna go off on the KDA music. The KDA song itself, I'll show you, is specifically a fight song. It's a triumph song. It's Ari saying, oh, bad stuff has happened and I have fears and insecurities and blah, 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 but I will face them. I will stand up to them. I will overcome them because I am Ari the pop star. And it's very much a feel-good song. Well, maybe not necessarily a feel-good song, but a feel-strong song. It's a song about overcoming difficulties. It's a song about standing up in spite of challenges. It's a song about expressing yourself fully, even though you have self-doubts and fears about exactly what's going on with who you are and what you're supposed to be doing. That song also has a particular energy. Like, there's a pretty lively beat. There's a lot of stuff going on in the music. It's got a lot of, loud chorus noises. A lot of, very high energy and high intensity stuff going on. But that's not what the imagery is telling us. The imagery itself is slow, it's languid, it's generally very sedate. Like, we get a few sort of psychedelic kaleidoscope sequences, but mostly, if there is any movement going on at all, it is happening essentially in slow motion, as we see right here. And so there is a mismatch between the energy of the song itself and the energy of the visuals that are on display. And this is very much an intentional... they meant to do that. You can argue about whether it was a good choice or not, and I certainly have my opinion about that, but this is very much an intentional choice. This is what they wanted from this particular music video. Now, according to the sort of in-universe lore kind of thing about this voice clip that was released with Ari talking about the inspiration for the song or whatever, this was sort of the intention, was to showcase some truth about how she feels inside, although of course she doesn't feel anything because she's a fictional character, but that was sort of the idea of the song, and so from that particular seed of an idea, this concept video has been put together. Now, for my money, I don't think it works. I think the mismatch between, imagery like this, and then a chorus like this, because, even when I'm listening to this right now, I'm sitting here kind of bobbing my head because, the energy of the song is high. It's dun 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 dun. It's a song to which you can, if you're into that kind of music, rock out. But that is not at all what the imagery itself is telling us. The imagery itself is giving us a mood of, downbeat, dourness, depression, self-doubt, self-loathing, perhaps, some worries and fears. It's all slowness and being stuck in one place without much dynamic movement. And again, this contrast is fully intentional. It's what they wanted from the song, but for me, when I watch the music video, the visuals, rather than complementing the music, become a complete distraction from it. I feel like I'm being told two completely opposite stories about who this character is and how they're feeling. Like, we begin with her in a cage. Like, she's in, like, and here's the thing. It makes perfect sense in, like, a triumphant fight song music video to have some imagery that represents the thing that is being overcome by the character. Like, here's Ari, here's all her doubts and her fears, they're caging her, they're keeping her inside, and then later on, by the end of the music video, let's see if I can find it, she blooms. Like, the cage quite literally turns into a blooming lotus flower with her in the middle, also evoking the imagery of her, like, 9 crystal tails, like, fully coming into her own and blooming. Like, that sort of thing is fine, but then what you would expect is for there to be a contrast between here, where everything is slow and languid in the beginning, where we see all the struggles. Here, everything's slow, languid, downbeat, like just moving really slowly, panning meaningfully across various objects. She's lying down in the middle of some kind of broken spider web, looking terribly alone and afraid. Then by the end, you would want there to be a contrasting energy, an energy that, rather than engaging in that heaviness, in that heavy slowness, an energy which, like, goes bum 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 dun dun dun, I'll show you what, like, where it actually kind of bursts into life a little bit, where there is some burst of movement, and there just isn't. And I can see the ideas at play here. Like, I can see the idea of contrasting what the music is saying with what the imagery is saying, giving you two sides of the same coin, letting you understand the stakes of the song, that she is in a very, like, dark, depressive place in a lot of ways. Like, she's struggling with a lot of self-doubt, but she has chosen to step forward, overcome it, like literally stepping on a headline that says one-hit wonders about pop stars. Like, yeah, I can see it, but it's just, to borrow a phrase from Lindsay Ellis, framing an aesthetic supersedes the text always, always, always. When you put imagery like this in a video, it's going to overpower everything else. Like, the imagery becomes the thing that creates the reading of the work as a whole, and that's where the dissonance becomes a problem, where it becomes weird, at least to me, to listen to this upbeat fight song and yet look at this, like, she like, this slow-mo walking thing looks like nothing so much as if she's walking towards her own execution. Like, it's where, like, especially since they're hiding her face in this particular shot, which is such a weird thing. Like, I would like to see maybe a smile on her lips, see her eyes rather than having them hidden away from us, see her walk with a little bit more energy rather than this slow motion boof, boof, boof. Because again, like, a slow motion walk, of course, can also be a badass thing, but then it has to be paired with, you know, music that actually lends itself to a slow badass walk, rather than, like, again, her stepping out on the stage right here with, like, the blue lights and the empty scenery. This looks like failure. Like, this doesn't look like a pop star making her triumphant return to the grand stage. This looks like someone walking into a performance where literally nobody bothered to show up. Like, this doesn't look triumphant. It looks like the absolute manifestation of her darkest, most terrifying fears of being ignored and forgotten. Which, again, okay, but then that's what the music video becomes about. It becomes about being trapped inside this crystal with the rather disrespectful graffiti all over it. Ari is my life, this says. Crystallized, falling into fear in, like, the most dramatic way it's humanly possible. Lots of shattered glass, by the way, which is a huge part of the imagery of this particular music video. Is like, okay, I see the idea, but I'm sorry. Like, framing an aesthetic supersedes the text always, always, always. It just does. You have to make a decision when it comes to a music video about whether you want to represent the music in the visuals or not, and in this case, they've chosen not to actually represent the music, but try to do some storytelling that runs directly counter to the music itself. So, you know, not a huge fan of that. Still, I am a big fan of a lot of the work that went into this thing. Clearly, a bunch of talented, like, visual effects artists worked on this. Like, these kaleidoscope effects at the start. YouTube compression absolutely ate this thing to pieces. I watched the premiere of the video, and like YouTube compression did not like all of this. Which makes sense because there's so much detail in this. They've got a bunch of, much like in the Evelyn video, they've got a bunch of film grain all over this thing, which evokes a kind of sort of nostalgic look, which is, again, part of the storytelling of the video, where we have this film grain effect that gives it essentially the look of an Instagram filter nowadays, mostly, but which in the context of what's going, you can see a little film artifact cropping up on screen here, which is the kind of artifact that you used to get on, like, physical film media, where like a little bit of a hair or a little scratch in the film would create artifacts like that that sort of flash by as you look through. And you can see those little artifacts. You can see one popping up right here, popping up throughout the whole thing, where we have this analog, emulated look of what it might look like if this was filmed on like really old film stock that had been stored improperly for a little while. And that's it's an interesting way to evoke nostalgia. Like, there's an interesting way to evoke the idea that we are inside Ari's head here, that we're inside her thoughts and her memories. We also have the vignetting effect, which is like when an image is brighter towards the center, but then it gets these dark corners around the edges. Again, most people nowadays will know that stuff from an Instagram filter, but it used to be like a physical artifact of just like the actual production of recorded images like this. And there's a lot of really good stuff going on here. Like, the posing and the lighting in these shots is actually quite excellent. Like, just the texture work on this old photograph of Ari is really impressive, and kind of hides the slight uncanny valley-ness that there is a little bit about seeing Ari. And I'm not sure about this image. I think they produced that image in the same way that they did a lot of the images for Seraphine's Twitter account, where they used like a real photograph of a real person and then did a paint over with a lot of League of Legends, like the features of the League of Legends character. And those things sort of have a tendency to turn out a little bit quasi-uncanny from time to time. That doesn't really matter. You don't really see that, because what you look at is you look at the lovely texture work, the way they use the edge lighting. It's like, it's absolutely gorgeous. There's not a lot, again, for me, as a person who's mostly interested in animation, there's relatively little for me to say. We have, like, again, the color contrast is being used very effectively here. Ari is mostly identified with blues and a little bit of purple, and then, of course, like, the blonde of her hair and the lightness of her skin. But everything around her is this dark black void, which is interspersed with these golden and white webbings of shattered glass all around her cell, I suppose. It's like she's lying at the bottom of a cell. And I believe this cell is supposed to be that crystal we see her trapped within nearer to the end of the short, sometime around here. I believe it's supposed to be essentially the same thing as this crystal right here, which is also the same thing as what we see her in when we get our first shot of her here. As you can see here, we've got a bunch of trapped air bubbles, essentially, as though she's been cast in resin to be preserved forever, which, again, is part of Ari's storyline in the KDA universe, is that she was, like, she got into the pop star life, and she was clearly very talented, but her managers just kept pushing her towards, like, soft, safe bubblegum pop that she really felt like she couldn't artistically stand behind, so now she's striking out on her own to make a bold artistic statement with music that doesn't sound anything at all unlike regular mainstream K-pop nowadays, but, well, you know, fair enough. Riot has always been more interested in imitating than innovating when it comes to their musical projects, which they do very well, by the way. It's not really a complaint, but it's always been a bit of a weird fit for Ari's storyline, is that she's like, she quit being a mainstream pop star because she was so tired of how safe and how sort of sanitized it all was. So now she's going to be an avant-garde artist doing something unique and special only to her. And then the thing they produce is specifically produced to sound as much like mainstream K-pop as humanly possible. Well, that's just the way it goes, I suppose. Such is the way. Anyway, we begin with Ari inside this gilded cage. There, again, like, lots of entrapment imagery, lots of imagery being trapped. Also, the kaleidoscope image serves that kind of thing well. A kaleidoscope is also like this disorienting crystal space of entrapment from which there is no escape. This dimension that goes on forever of light reflected into light, creating this bizarre imagery. That's also often used to, like, symbolize or signify being trapped in labyrinths, for example, labyrinths of light. So there's lots and lots of imagery of being trapped, of being confined, of being held in place, of being unable to move forward. And then there is the imagery of mirrors. Mirrors, reflections, and refractions, which again, Ari is reflecting on herself, but she's not sure of herself, so she doesn't really get a good image. So we have these reflections that cast this completely shattered image of everything that she has been up until now, and like her other band members in KDA and her past, and like she doesn't have a clear image of herself, is essentially what this thing is saying. Now we have this, which just seems to be mostly a glamour shot, but it looks fantastic. Like I'm a sucker for silhouette shots. I'm a sucker for like just like fantastically bright lights outlining a character figure in the background. And then also there's multiple versions of her, which again comes back to this reflection thing that they've got going on, because the implication here is that she's sitting inside a hall of mirrors, and these are reflections of her existing in various points in the space. Again, this thing of multiple different reflections, multiple different versions of her, multiple different Aris, that like expectations that people have of her. They want her to be this thing, but who am I and what am I supposed to be? How am I supposed to see myself in any of this? Again, the imagery is really, really compelling for like a slow, soulful ballad, or like a sort of dark minor key song about self-doubt and fears. It's not so well suited, I don't think, for the upbeat pop song that we got, but, such is life, here we are. And that sort of covers most of the imagery that's really being used here. The only bit of real character animation we get is this slow-mo walk right here, about which there isn't that much to say. It's a walk cycle. It's a good one. There's a perfectly well-produced walk cycle, and there's the montage effect of her walking past, like first like walking off the street essentially, then walking into the hallway, where in the background we see the various iterations of Ari, Popstar Ari, KDA Ari on the first one, and then a flash to Ari herself with some letters that I unfortunately can't read. I'm sure they mean something substantial to the thing that's going on, but I did not pay attention in the Korean class I never took, so here we are. It's a good walk cycle. Like, if it was moving along at 100% speed rather than going at like 50 to 25% speed, I think you would get a pretty confident strut out of her. Like, because she has, if you pay attention, you can see she has this up and down, like, fairly confident swagger to her shoulders. Like, you could probably get a pretty confident queen strut out of that, like her just like a queen reclaiming her throne kind of vision or idea. But because it's moving in slow motion, it gets this gravitas. It gets this like sort of weight of expectation and very low paced energy. And it's like, it doesn't really work. Here's a lovely shot of her. Like, I do like, again, the way that they're playing with light, which you can really see if you slow it down. You have the red light first being refracted through the resin crystal, whatever the hell this thing is, switching into a yellow light from a different direction, which like causes all kinds of interesting distortions on her character model in there. And then this light, which almost seems to work as a kind of black light, sort of lighting up her dress without lighting up the rest of her, giving a lot of really cool visual lighting effects on the Ari that is inside here. And the same thing here, like lots of fantastic use of color. Like, I like the little flashing between like green, blue, purple, and then into the bright sort of scarlet pink of fear as she falls past, with again shattered glass all around her, the shattered self-image casting her into the abyss of fear, and a completely empty performance venue where nobody came to see her at all. And again, lots of gorgeous imagery. Like, I do feel like the filter that they got on top of it, like the film grain filter and like all of the artifacting that it introduces, it does mess a little bit with the kaleidoscope sequences here, I feel like, because they already get really granular and kind of dirty in the image. Like, there's lots of fine detail image. When you have this film grain filter over top of that, it just kind of becomes impossible to discern fine-grained details anywhere, and so it just kind of looks like the grainy mess of a thing sometimes, which I think is a little bit of a pity, because to me at least the visual appeal of these kaleidoscope sequences is this sort of super sleek neon cyber sort of aesthetic expression, but oh well. Back into the idea of the mind, here we see Ari in a somewhat happier place, sending little lanterns into the sky as though little ideas, like a freedom of expression, essentially sitting inside of a lotus flower. Again, the lotus flower being a thing that she evokes with her tails as well, like the way that she opens her 9 tails. Kind of to me seems like it's meant to evoke the idea of the open lotus flower. That's certainly what they're going for with the imagery when we come to the point where the gilded cage that she was sitting in finally, comes open. As we see this ascension to the sky, rising into freedom. Another hand coming down to meet her, whether that's a reflected hand or perhaps the hand of her compatriots in KDA itself. And we see here sort of finally, Ari has a clear self-image, right? Like, we have the shattered mirror floating around, and it gives way instead to a window where she gets to look at herself in the recording booth, doing what she loves, pursuing her artistic integrity of producing utterly mainstream K-pop. I'm sorry, I'll keep harping on about that one because it's a little bit funny to me that they try to position her as a sort of outsider renegade when that's, no, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But yeah, here we have the lotus flower, we have like the 9 tails opening up, sort of evoking similar visual aesthetics as a signifier for her coming into herself and blooming into the person that she really wants to be rather than the person everyone else wants her to be. And so goes the KDA Ari music video, where she's still playing to absolutely fucking nobody. Of course, the point of that might be that she's playing to nobody because she doesn't care if nobody wants to hear the thing that she has to say, because it's more important to her to express herself honestly rather than be commercially successful. Sure, but my god, I wish they would have chosen a different song to go with this particular imagery, because it feels, to me, honestly, a little bit kind of wasted on a song like this, especially when you end on a shot like with the tones are completely blue and cold and dejected, like she's in some dark gas station bathroom and she's still looking into a shattered mirror without a clear self-image, like a little bit better of a self-image, like she can see herself more clearly, but still, like, it's supposed to be triumphant though. But we do resolve finally with, like, the clearest self-image that we're ever gonna get. Like, Ari looking back on herself as a child, looking back on who she was when she was a younger woman before all of this pop industry nonsense happens. And we also get that a little bit in the shot before, like, where we see the cracks in the mirror as we fade over to the next shot finally resolve themselves, sort of indicating that maybe she's finally come to a point where she can see herself clearly. And it's partly by looking back on who she once was. Like, it works on its own. Like, on its own, the music video works pretty well. On its own, the song works pretty well. Put them together, and at least in my opinion, you get a little bit of a mess. Anyway, if you've enjoyed me complaining about the Ari concept video, I tried to praise it also. There's a lot of good stuff in there, it's just the mismatch, I can't get past it. Then you can hit the like, comment, and or subscribe buttons down below if you're so inclined, because, you know, I'll go there reasons. If you want to watch more videos like this one, then that's how you tell YouTube to show you those videos, so, you know, bell icon, blah blah blah. Outside of that, I have a Patreon, a merchandise store, and a tip jar. You can use them if you want to. If you don't want to, please don't worry about it. Like, I'm doing okay these days, and like, if you don't want to support me, that's completely fair. I will encourage you to, generally speaking, if there's content online that you enjoy, whether it's on YouTube or literally anywhere else, please consider supporting the people who make the stuff that you like directly with anything you can, whenever you can. Because, like, that $1 donation is quite literally the same as thousands upon thousands of ad-supported views on pretty much any platform. It makes so much more of a difference than you think. Right, second channel. I have a second channel. I'm supposed to promote it. I have a second channel. I do Let's Plays over there. I've been playing through Final Fantasy games recently. We're also doing some Hades. In fact, we're going to be streaming Hades over there as well. It's the most successful thing I've ever done on that channel. So, you know, hey, if you want to see the most successful thing I've done on that tiny channel over there, you can come watch that. Also, other games, there should be some footage playing of that for you right now. So you can look at that and see, hey, that's a video game I like. Maybe I want to watch that guy play it. So, subscribe and stuff over there also. Is that it? Is that everything? I think so. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to wash your hands and wear a mask. Oh my god, wear a mask. And try to act in solidarity with those people who are working really hard right now to try and make the world a better place.